quick before we jump into the episode. This is a future Kelsey and Al here.
Hi.
We talked in the end of Kelsey's episode, we had like a little disclaimer about, we felt really bad kind of discussing such a heavy subject, but I thought it would be worthwhile mentioning it in the beginning too, just because we get into a lot of nitty-gritty stuff that might sound a bit ungrateful or complainy, but unfortunately is the reality of like the complexity of the job that we have. And we want to have an open discussion about that and be honest, and but it does kind of breach that parasocial relationship, and it might be a little upsetting. I felt upset talking about it. It's nothing major, but
we don't need to hurt anyone's feelings. We just want to, speak our truth, I guess. And like, it's a little bit weird for us when people feel like they know us on these really deep levels, when the parts of us that you see online are curated and scripted and edited, and there's a lot of work that goes into that, and it's not a holistic depiction of who we are as people. And it feels weird when people watch our stuff and feel like they know us, or like are disappointed, or stuff like that. It's just kind of it's weird.
It's weird. So we just wanted to brace you that we're about to have a discussion where it might seem like we are frustrated, but it might seem like maybe we're mad at our audience, and that's not the case. It just kind of gets to you every once in a while, and we wanted to talk about that. So
yeah.
Brace yourself.
Nothing deep, or like it's not that deep. We just want to speak our truth and kind of talk about it, and everything is better once you can talk about it. So with that, let's get right into the episode.
Hi there, and welcome to yet another episode of the Make Art Don't Starve podcast. I'm your host, Kelsey. Hi there, and welcome to yet another episode of the Make Art Don't Starve podcast. I'm your host, Kelsey.
And I'm your other host, Al, and today we're going to talk about something that has haunted me for a long time, and that is toxic positivity in the online art community.
I am honestly so excited to hear this unhinged rant. I've been hyped for it. Yeah.
It's going to be unhinged. In a recent episode, we talked about what people disliked in studio vlogs. And someone mentioned they wanted to see failure in studio vlogs. They didn't like that everything was perfect all the time. And I agreed, and I was like, oh, interesting. From now on, I want to try to put that into my studio vlogs. Yeah. And then I was thinking about it, and like a few days later, I texted you, Kelsey, and I was like, actually, I used to do this. And I don't know why I didn't think of this in the podcast episode, but I did it, and people didn't like it. And so I want to talk about that, because I actually have a lot of feelings about it. So I used to, especially in my sketchbook tours, talk about what I didn't like about my art. I would critique it. I'd say, I think I failed here. I don't like what I did here. And sometimes I would be maybe a little harsh. Yeah. I would joke about it. I'd be like, ew, ugly.
But that's like totally healthy to do, and like normal, and like a good thing. Yeah.
It wasn't a big deal. It was just like, oh, I didn't like this. You know what I mean? It's a sketchbook. Not everything is going to be good. And I accepted that. That was fine. And on Instagram, especially before I even had a YouTube channel, on Instagram, I would talk all the time about like, oh, I don't like this. I shared it anyway because it was art that I did. But I don't like this. This is ugly. Don't like how this turned out. I struggled with this. And the comments when I would talk about that, not necessarily negative. People weren't giving me hate for it. People weren't mad about it, but they were comments that didn't make me feel good. And so I learned to change my language. I learned to stop talking about that. And I learned to, say it very, very differently. And if you watch any of my new videos, like in the past year, if I ever talk about anything remotely like that, I always say, I'm not being too harsh on myself, or I know people don't like it, because I want to make sure that people know, like, hey, I'm not beating myself up. But I've never been. Like, I have never been beating myself up. So I wanted to talk about some of those comments that I've gotten and why I don't any longer share those feelings, even though I would love to. I think it's super important for artists, especially artists with any sort of platform, to talk about our failures, to talk about, I don't always do things perfectly, and I struggle sometimes, and I lack in skill here and here. I think that's really important for younger artists or beginner artists, especially on the internet, when all we post and all we see are other people cranking out masterpieces day after day. It can be confusing for younger people to think that, like, oh, am I supposed to be doing that? Am I a bad artist because I don't like what I'm doing? When the reality is, we never stop improving. We never stop critiquing ourselves. We will always want to get better. We will always see the things that we've done wrong. I mess up all the time. I throw stuff away. I don't like things that I do all the time. And do you relate, Kelsey? Do you
this is like a normal part of like being an artist. Like, as an artist, like, your journey is going to be spread out over your entire lifetime, right? Like, it can't be this enclosed thing where like you practice for 5 years and then, oh, that's like your skill level now for the rest of time. And like, you're always going to be changing and evolving as your tastes change, as your abilities evolve. Like, it's just gonna naturally shift.
Yeah.
And that's just
you will
like
never peak.
The way that it is. Yeah. And I think it's frustrating that, you're being held to this kind of like standard where you can't talk about those failures, because that's a big part of like what being an artist is and like what improving is actually all about. Like the journey to perfection, or like, you know, peak artistic form isn't just like a straight line. It's like super squiggly.
Yeah, it's always a roller coaster. It's always up and down. And I want to be transparent about that. I've gone, whenever I have shown like old art from high school or like something bad that I've done, I'll get DMs of people being like, how, like, thank you, like, thank you for sharing this. It makes me feel so much better about what I do, knowing that you were here and now you're here. So people like do want to see that. And I feel frustrated that I no longer feel able to share those things because of these stupid comments that I get that I know people mean with good intentions.
Yeah.
I know these come from a good place, but it's this idea of toxic positivity that really upsets me. I think we all have different experiences and we all have different mindsets and we all have different things that work for us. Just because I'm going to talk about my mindset when it comes to art, that doesn't mean that everyone has to think this way or that I'm right and you're wrong. And if you approach your artwork with the idea of always being positive and always hyping yourself up and loving everything you do and refusing to say like, oh, I did a mistake here or I made a mistake, or if you don't want to beat yourself up or whatever, if that's fine, if that works for you, I can see that being beneficial for hobby artists or people who don't want to make this a career or whoever you are. If that works for you, awesome. It becomes toxic when you try to force that idea onto other people.
Yeah.
I don't want to think that way. It doesn't work for me. I don't see the benefits. Please don't try to tell me to think that way. It becomes really, really frustrating.
Yeah.
I would like to share some of these comments that I've gotten and kind of break them down and talk about why it just doesn't make sense for me. And why, if you think this way, keep doing that, but don't make other people think that way.
Yeah. No, 100%. 100%. I
love your mug.
Oh, thank you. I was like looking for a way to like drink water, but I also wanted to like, it's very topical, I feel like.
It is. No, that's perfect.
Yes. Yeah, this is going to be a two-parter, basically. We're going to talk about like your rant and then my rant. And if you follow my channel, you already know what my rant's probably going to be about. But yes, let's dive into these comments head first. I'm very excited.
All right. So, first up, I like your videos and your art is great, but I'm disliking this video because of how much you put yourself down. You are awesome. It's a shame you don't see it. I would 10 times like this video if it weren't for you putting yourself down so often. Try some positive self-talk. I get the sentiment. First of all, you don't have to tell me that you're disliking the video. Slay for the honesty.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Especially because it's like directed toward you. Like they wanted you to read it. It wasn't like I'm disliking this video because Al was negative. It's like no,
like I want you to know.
Yeah. And it's like, why do you... I feel weird when people, like, say, like, oh, I'm unsubscribing because of, like, this reason. Like, why did you have to announce your departure? Like, slay, but also, what?
Yeah, like, okay, good for you, but also, like, I don't need to know. Like, you can just remove yourself if that's what you need. Like, I'm not gonna be mad about that. I don't know why... Unless it's, like, I did something wrong. If, like, it's, like... I said something incorrect, and it's like, I'm unsubscribing because you did this and you didn't apologize. Like, fair. Let me know my mistakes. Yeah. But because you didn't like that I don't know, it's so weird. Secondly, people seem to, when I say something like, oh, I don't like this, or I am not happy with how this turned out, what I mean is, I'm not happy with how this turned out. That's all it means. It means, like, there's layers behind that, like, oh, in this process, I messed up here and I see where I'm lacking here. But overall, it just means I just don't like it that much. Not even that I dislike it.
It ain't that deep.
It ain't that deep. People seem to hear that as like, I fucking hate this. I hate myself. I'm going to unalive myself because I am a failure. That's not what I'm saying. People are like, oh, try positive self-talk. When did I say that? Anything opposite to that, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the comments will be like, no, be nice to yourself. When am I being mean though? Like, what? I don't understand that. And like, it's so nice. Like, people want me to feel good about myself, but I never said that I don't. Do you know what I mean? Like, never. Yeah. It's so funny to me when people are like, no, don't hate yourself. You're amazing. It's like, I never said I hated myself. Why are you even bringing that up? It feels like, are you trying to tell me something? Do you know what I mean? Like, where is this coming from? And so
I
that
feel like
always
people aren't used to like experiencing healthy negativity or something online, or like they think they see negativity and they think, oh my god, this is like a terrible thing that I have to eradicate. Whereas like you can be negative in a very healthy way that like helps you actually improve. I think a lot of artists don't have this ability to like look at their work objectively and give themselves like an honest critique because they feel too emotionally attached to it. Like their value as a person is attached to stuff that they produce, whereas like no, like I made that, but it's not like a part of me, like a part of my soul. Like sure, like it's a form of self-expression, but like did I succeed or did I fail at like accurately expressing myself the way that I wanted to? Like, was my effort at communication a failure or not? And like, if art's communication, then we can succeed or fail and aim to improve. Like, it ain't that deep.
It's exactly. And like, if people don't understand that negativity can be positive sometimes or neutral even. Like, it doesn't, just because I say like, oh, I don't like, it's just not that deep. My relationship to art, every artist's relationship to art is different and very complicated. And over the years that I've matured, and like my relationship has become still very complicated, but much more simple. I don't feel tied to my art. I know that's an issue with a lot of artists, and maybe that's why people are so quick to pick up on that idea of like, don't hate yourself. But like for me, it's just like, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? There are some big projects, like a commission. It's more important for that to be a success. But otherwise, everything that I do is just an attempt. You know what I mean? It's just a step in the process. I'm 24. I have plenty of time to continue failing. Like, not everything I'm gonna do is gonna be perfect. And I have plenty of time to do the stuff that I want to do. I'm in no rush to make the perfect art piece. Everything that I do is just a step in the process. It's not my last chance. And I think it's interesting that I think it says a lot more about them than it does, like, me when they have these comments. Because, how do I put this? Like, when I paint a painting, however it ends up is how it ends up. It does not matter to me if it's perfect or if it's a total failure. It might be frustrating during, it might be a little disappointing afterwards, but within a week, I'll forget I even painted it. But, like, I think other people must see every single painting as their one shot to make it in the world. And, like, that's just not what it is. You're going to be doing this probably for the rest of your life. There is no rush to make the perfect piece right now. And, like, especially my sketchbook, when I rag on myself in my sketchbook, that's not me saying, like, I'm a terrible artist. That's one little sketch that I just didn't like.
But also, like, practicing is literally the purpose of a sketchbook. Like if you're supposed to fail, like, it should happen in your sketchbook. That's kind of, like, the whole point.
It's a perfect place for it.
Yeah.
And I think, we'll talk about this a little bit later, too, but, like, failure is just part of the process. And the more you accept it and you, like, I remember back in the day, failure to me was, like, discontinued art block. I was in art block for just so long. And failure was really, really scary because it meant that at any moment I might not be an artist. And that was just a stupid, like, mentality. And now that I've accepted failure and mistakes as part of the process, it does not matter to me when it happens. I was thinking, I just wrote a script for a voiceover, and I was like, you know what? I can't even remember the last time I did anything that I would qualify as a failure. Because I don't see them as failures anymore. It's just attempt 1, and now we'll move on to attempt 2. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, it's a learning process. It's like, I failed here at this specific thing that I wanted to achieve. But, like, that's other aspect of success. But, like, that failure was informative. And, like, if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't know the thing that I know now. So I can, like, fail less in the future. Everything is about, like, just decreasing the probability of, like, repeated failures, but, like, you have to fail the first time in order to decrease the probability of repeated failure. Like, it's like that's the whole point.
That's the point. And when I point it out in a video, it's just me being like, hey, I didn't do, it's not like, it's just crazy.
Yeah. So I think, I totally see how that's really annoying and how it, like, it doesn't provide good incentives for you to keep talking about failure because it's just met with, like, people who don't understand, like, the point, and that's frustrating. Yeah.
Would you like to hear some more?
I would very much so like to hear some more. Let me take another sip of water.
So I'll speed run some of these until I find one that's, like, really spicy.
Yes.
Girl, you have to stop putting yourself down. Your drawings are really beautiful and varied. Never said they weren't. No need to over-explain your art. Just have fun with it. We love it. So sweet. You missed the point. If you suck at drawing, I should go burn my sketchbook. It's so bad. Okay. I really hate the energy in this video. Great. I usually love sketchbook tours, but I couldn't even finish watching this one because you were so negative. Every single page you were pointing things out that you hate and why it wasn't good. You are obviously talented, but especially with all the negativity going on in the world, I came to YouTube to watch positive art content. This video gave me bad energy. Slay.
I love how they're like, this negative sketchbook tour is giving me Invasion of Ukraine vibes. like what? I'm sorry, what?
Okay, maybe you should relax. But okay, maybe find a different video, I guess. This is great. I really like your work and wish I could draw as good as you. But I unliked because I unliked you. I downvoted you because of your constant complaining. It's really unattractive and unprofessional, and you should stop doing it if you want people to buy your work or work with you. I think talking about how I have room for improvement is, if anything, an incentive for people to want to work with me because I'm open to feedback and criticism, but slay. I mean, when you don't like your sketchbook, then you would hate mine. No, I wouldn't. I don't even know you. It's all pretty good, actually. You have some sympathy for yourself. Never said I didn't have sympathy, just that some things didn't meet my standard. Dude, your work is really good, but you should give yourself a break because everything is exercise. I know, that's why I'm giving it criticism, because I want to work on those exercises.
I found one that I can read. Can I read one?
Go, yeah, go.
Okay, so this person says, damn, your quote-unquote low-effort pages look exactly like how my sketchbook normally looks. Guess I don't put enough effort into my sketchbook. I don't really have the materials I want to use in my sketchbook, and also the sketchbook I'm using has pretty thin paper. I didn't really even think about it, but like 10 of my previous sketchbooks were mixed media with thicker paper, and I realized I hate the way that everything looks. So I think that a lot of these comments are like super overblowing like the self-critique that you're doing here. Like I actually watched the video that you're talking about. I'm pretty sure the video, like the sketchbook tours they're talking about, and
I'd love to hear your opinion if they're too negative. I'd love to know.
Yeah, like I don't think they're being like. I don't think you were too negative in the video. I think, being honest is fine.
Yeah.
I don't think people really expect honesty is the thing. And I think, like, it's overblown in their brains, or, like, the way they think about it is, like, they experience negativity, and that's, like, they overblow it in the comments, is in my personal opinion. It's kind of, like, a similar thing to, like, when you share, like, a personal trauma that happened to you, and then someone else has something that happened to them, and they're, like, internally comparing it, being like, I feel really bad about this trauma, but, like, that person had it so much worse. Like, are my feelings justified? Like, am I actually allowed to feel that level of hurt or something when it's, like, it's not a contest? Yeah, and, like, we can all be upset, and everything can affect us in different ways because we have different, like, reference, like, experiences to, like, compare things to. And, like, they can shit talk, for lack of a better word, like, their own art and, like, be honest and, like, self-critique, and that's fine. And, like, it doesn't matter, like, that they're at, like, a different level than you. I don't see why it's so important that you're constantly positive.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that, like, fully made sense, or, like, kind of the thing that I was trying to point to.
Yeah. No, I get it. I think a lot of those comments, so I do get a lot of those comments of, like, in the same vein, like, what you read, like, oh, if you think yours is bad, you'll hate mine.
Right.
And that bothers me because I know people mean it as a compliment. It's not. Like, it's so not a compliment. That makes me feel like garbage. And there's nothing I can say to that. It's not a compliment. There's no point in putting yourself down. And maybe I'm doing the same thing. Like, don't put yourself down. But, like, you don't need to compare yourself to me. Like, that's not what I'm here for. And when you make me the standard that you compare yourself to, not a compliment. It makes me feel bad. And it makes you feel bad. There's no need to do it. And there's also that thing of, like, the way I feel about my art, like, when I say, like, oh, I don't like it, that is a condensed version of, like, the entire process behind making that art. You see the final product. I see everything that I did going into it. My planning, what the picture I had in my head of what I wanted it to look like, every mistake I made along the way, the frustrations I felt, the final product, and the comparison of what I had in my head, and the, you know, what I know I'm capable of doing versus what I did, and what my goals are. And so when I say I don't like it, that's an amalgamation of me being like, oh, here's all the things, you know, all those little tally marks. And in the end, it's just, I don't like it that much. And, sorry, I just lost my thought. Like, give me a second. When I say that, like, it's just me, it's condensing that. And people take that and say, like, okay, this is bad. And if that's what your art looks like when it's bad, which that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it didn't live up to my expectations. But I'm not going to say that every time. I'm not going to explain every time what I mean. They see that and they say, well, that's what my art looks like, so you must hate my art. No. Like, I don't know you. I don't know what your art looks like. When I say I don't like what I did, I'm talking about, like, I'm thinking of me in the future, too. Like, what can I one day do? And what do I want to be doing? This isn't that. This isn't what I want to be doing. It's not saying that this art and any art that looks like this is objectively bad art. That's not what I'm saying. When I talk about my feelings towards... But also you're talking about,
like, the process, too, right? Like, maybe you didn't plan as much as you should have. Maybe you didn't do, like, the requisite sketches or, like, the anatomy, like, studying beforehand. Like, there are so many things that you could fail to do that would cause, like, failure, quote-unquote, in a piece that, like... has no direct reflection, like, the top of your abilities, but, like, represents, like, a lack of preparation that's valid to talk about.
Yes, and like my feelings at the end of the day, like my feelings about my art are literally it's about my art. It has nothing to do with anyone else. And I know some people are like, you can't talk in a vacuum. I'm talking in a vacuum, dude. When I say like I don't like my art, it has nothing to do with anyone, because again, that is a condensation or
an amalgamation.
Yes, thank you. That is an amalgamation of all those complicated feelings, of that process, of everything, of the planning. It is not an objective judgment on the art. So if your art looks like that, I'm not talking about you. I don't know you. I don't know what your art looks like. It could be great. It's about me and my feelings. And it gets really, really frustrating and exhausting to be told, and even if you mean it with the best of intentions and you want me to feel good about myself, it's really frustrating to be told that I'm not allowed to feel how I feel about my artwork. The thing that I spend the most time with in the world, the thing that is my goal, my dream, my job, of course I'm going to have complicated feelings about it. To be told that I'm not allowed to have those feelings or express those feelings sucks. It really does.
Yeah, and especially like those same people want you to be more honest and authentic, and it's like you're the what do you want?
What do you want? It's hard because I want to be honest and I want to be authentic. And I also agree, like, I don't need to be pouring negativity into the world. I don't want to do that. I'm all about, like, positivity. But the thing is, sometimes it's not positive. That doesn't mean that it turns into a black hole and that I hate everything. Sometimes it's just not good, though. And I want to be able to talk about that because that is a natural, guaranteed part of the process. And I think, so now moving into, like, why is this mentality like toxic? Again, if it works for you, that's fine. But when you insist on like, no, everything's fine and I'm not going to talk about what's not good and I'm going to approach everything with this idea of like, it's perfect, I'm perfect, which that might not be exactly what people are thinking, but that's how I view it. That's how I view that mentality. How do you ever improve? How do you deal with failure? You can't, like, you set this bar for yourself of perfection and you say that you meet it every time. So what happens when you really, really miss that bar? You're not equipped to deal with that. If you can't handle the little failures along the way and laugh at yourself and say like, oh, that's not good. When you really mess something up, which you will, because everyone does, how are you going to deal with that? You won't have the tools to deal with that. And like, I just don't understand what that's like giving you. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand what that constant positive mentality is offering you.
I think it's far healthier to acknowledge that failure is a natural part of life, that it's going to happen, and be open to talking about it and being like, you know, here's what I'm going to do instead.
Yeah. And it also, like, so like we were talking about, it goes hand in hand with just improving your skills. Yeah. When I, like, critique myself or am too hard on myself, that's me just saying, like, here's the things that I would like to improve. Maybe I'm not wording it perfectly every time because that would take too long. But when I'm talking about that, it's just being like, you know what, here's where I lack skill. When I talk about like, oh, I'm bad at doing dogs, it's not because I am a bad person and I am like, it's because I have not practiced that skill enough and it's something I need to work on. And if I want to get better at it, I have to work on it. When I do a painting, I'm like, oh, you know what, this part doesn't look good. That means that I have to work on that skill. I need to practice that. I'm identifying an area that I lack in. And like, how, if you're never going to acknowledge those things, if you're never going to be able to critique yourself, how do you ever like, you'll probably improve just by, you know, nature of continuing to do something. But how are you ever going to, like, pick areas and be like, okay, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to work on this. Right. If you're not willing to acknowledge things that you're bad at.
Yeah. I talked about how I didn't like studying drawing fundamentals in a video one time. You remember this.
Yeah.
And I got a bunch of comments being like, wow, like, you're not really a real artist then, are you, if you, like, don't like doing certain things? It's like, do you have any idea, like, how many skills are involved in art? Like, do you really expect me to love every single one of them? Like, and doesn't it say, like, more about me, like, positively, that I want to practice that skill anyway, even though I don't like it, because I acknowledge how important it is? And, like, what? I feel people have this really weird relationship with, like, art as, like, a talent or a skill or a calling, and view, like, artists as, like, some kind of, like, weird mythological figure,
and it
that,
ties
like, aren't
into the
real people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you should be fine with, you're passionate about every subject and you're willing to just do anything and you're not going to do anything else. You don't need to eat. All you need to do is just draw. No, bestie. No.
Or, like, not consider marketability when you make art. I think considering marketability is a really important part of, like, taking your career full time. Like, to a certain extent, you do have to make content for an audience or, like, for the market that you want to participate in. Like, that's capitalism, baby.
Yeah, literally. And, like, even without capitalism, like, you can't just, I mean, I guess without capitalism, maybe you could, but, like, you can't just do whatever you can't just draw furry art every day and expect everyone to love that. You need to find your market, and you need to be able to market to those people. Like, I can't just sit here and, like, people have this, again, it ties into that starving artist trope of being like, you expect to, we got a comment on the podcast of people being like, very recently about Skillshare, about, like, I hate seeing people shove the Skillshare ad down my face, and I get what you're saying, but, like, you can't expect artists to just, like, there's this mythological idea that we sit and we draw our muse over and over and over again, and nothing else in the world matters.
Yeah.
Like, no, there's other moving parts to it, and we're not going to like every part, and we're not going to be passionate about every part, and we're going to struggle, and we're going to do things despite that. And this idea that, like, you only do what you're good at, and you only do it because you love it is just not true. And I think it, not to be dramatic, but it kind of silences artists in that sense of, like, you're not expected to talk about your failures, and you're not allowed to talk about your complicated feelings unless it's, like, some dark, moody self-portrait. Like, no, like, sometimes I just want to talk about how I'm bad at drawing feet. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And then you draw 100 feet and probably get a lot of weird feet comments.
Oh my god, every single comment has been like, you're showing those dogs for free? Yes, I am.
So, a big reason why I love art so much, or, like, why I love painting, is I love, like, the problem-solving aspects of it, of, like, seeing this, like, amazing thing. Like, I've been really into, like, tonalism lately, which is, like, kind of like an art movement that happened after Impressionism, and is about, like, a lot of, like, atmospheric landscapes, like, very, like, indirect painting. So, like, you know how direct painting is, like, alla prima and stuff. Like, indirect painting is all about, like, lots of build-up layers, lots of, like, glazing, lots of, like, you know, muted colors, and really interesting atmospheric effects. Like, I like the challenge of taking, like a completely new thing that I've never tried before, breaking it down, analyzing it, looking at a painting, and trying to suss out, like, how it was made, and, like, how can I do that? That's why I'm, like, so passionate about, like, master copies and, like, master studies, because they're so interesting to take a really famous painting and to, like, be like, how can I make something that looks just like this? Like, forge it, basically, but, like, you know, learn something along the way for myself. And that problem solving along the way, and, like, sussing things out and, like, discovering new stuff is, like, what I love so much about art, and, like, why I don't often do, like, original pieces and do, like, a lot of, like, references and a lot of, like, master copies and stuff, because, like, that's personally what I'm really interested in. It's weird that people think that you're not allowed to approach art from, like, an analytical sense, or, like, a not super emotional sense, that you have to be really emotionally connected to everything that you make, and that some stuff can't just be for practice, that you consider, like, fun. Objectively. Yeah. Like, sometimes I want to paint rocks amidst, like, a wildflower meadow and do it in the style of Berthe Morisot, a female impressionist painter, that she never did it this way, but, like, I don't know, I feel like it.
I just want to do it, and there's literally nothing behind it. I just kind of want to do it.
Yeah, like, I'm just operating off of vibes.
Literally, that's so, like, I feel like my relationship with the art has really turned into just, like, I'm just doing it because I want to do it. And in the long run, it'll pay off for practice, and sometimes I'm intentional about things, but a lot of things is, like, I'm just vibing and I'm having fun, and that's all there is to it. I think a lot of other artists must have a very complicated, which is, I understand, because I used to too, but I think the expectation is that you have simultaneously a very straightforward and a very complicated relationship with your art. And at the end of the day, like I've said multiple times, we all have different experiences, and we're all doing things differently, and we have different methods and different approaches, and if you do pour your soul and your emotion into every piece you do, like, that's fine. Like, if that works for you, that's fine. But I think a problem that the internet has, and this is not, you know, special to art, the art community, the entire internet has this problem of, because we have this freedom of anonymity, we all want to be the smartest person, and so you go onto a video, and there's always someone who has to comment proving that they're smarter, or something like that. We always have to give advice, and we always assume that our way is the right way. I think that's human nature. I don't think that's, like, that's not a dig at anyone. That's literally, I think we're all kind of, in a way, to some degree, wired that way. But we have to remember that, like, we are all different people. We are all individuals who do things differently, and that's fine. That's totally fine. If you watch a video and someone is approaching something in the wrong way or a different way than you do, you don't even have to say anything. You can comment if you want, but you really don't have to, because maybe that's just the way that they want to do it. And if I approach my art willing to critique something and that makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to watch, but you also don't have to say anything. You don't have to insist that I do it your way because you like that way better. Remember that I'm different from you and that I like doing things a different way. And I've been trying to keep that in mind when I go watch other people. I have a tendency to, like, watch someone go, like, why would you do it like that? But then I'm like, you know what? that's the way
they probably don't want my feedback.
They probably did not. They don't want my feedback. Like they probably don't care what I have to say, and I'm gonna keep my mouth shut because they don't need to know. I don't need to share. And I think if we all had that, not that we can't comment, not that we can't communicate, but we need to remember that like we don't always need to make other people feel the way that we feel.
Sometimes I think people should keep their opinions to themselves in some cases. Like engagement's awesome, but sometimes I don't want it. Sometimes I don't want it.
And it's
that's
so
for
hard
part
to say
2
that.
though. But yeah.
It's so hard to say that because, like I said, I know that people say this with the best of intentions, and I always feel so bad being like, how dare you engage with my video? How dare you try to make me feel good about myself? But when you get a lot of those comments, every time you try to just be honest, it weighs on you.
So yeah, I think that like a big part of this, in my opinion at least, is that on the internet, there's been kind of this like, and in our community especially, there's kind of been this like, massive oversimplification of a lot of like basic concepts of like tracing versus like reference or like drawing art from the imagination, or you know, critiquing yourself honestly in like super healthy ways. And like people tend to be really polarized about it and don't allow for a lot of like nuance in their opinions, and they see the world like very much like black and white, whereas like it's very healthy to critique yourself and be honest with the parts of your art that you don't like so that you can actually improve in a healthy way. So yeah, in part 2 we're going to be talking about comments writ large and our relationship with our audiences, and lots of stuff that happens when you post yourself online. So I'm hyped for my part of the rant.
I'm so excited to listen.
All right, so that is the end of our episode. It's a little bit of like a, you know, short 30-minute one. I hope you enjoyed still, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.